All right, five after.
Yep.
All right.
I say we take off. So everybody, welcome. I think people will probably be straggling in. We had a little bit of difficulty into the meeting, but we have a packed agenda with a lot to celebrate. Um, the balance of the agenda basically is going to be that Elena is going to recap the last meeting, and then both Elena and Michelle are going to talk about Jackson's historic vote yesterday because they were there. So is Tyler, and I can see some, Robert, I think you were also there. So some of you may also want to participate. We have two great guests who were formative in Jackson's grassroots movement, who will also be sharing some of their strategies and experiences that led to that successful vote. And then Chris is going to update us on some of his frontline conversations with political allies of the decrim movement before we move into Michelle and Elena talking about personal testimonies that we had discussed a little bit last time, but the variety of different structures that can be used for that really critical tool in this endeavor. And then finally, we're going to move into open discussion. So, Elena, go for it. It's yours.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Cecilia. So happy to see all these familiar faces again. I'm just going to keep it really short and sweet because I know most of the folks who are currently in the meeting attended previous meetings. Um, Past two meetings, we've talked about the goals of DPMI, why decriminalization, why psilocybin, why now. In the first meeting, if someone hasn't listened to that yet, Michelle provided a really great visual presentation about the differences between legalization, decrim, medical and recreational models, unregulated and regulated models. So that's super helpful foundational info. We also talked a little bit about the history of decrim progress so far and other areas of Michigan that are decriminalized. So in summary, that's Ann Arbor, Detroit, Hazel Park, Ferndale, Ypsilanti, and all of Washtenaw County. And now one more city that is now decriminalized. Um, we talked a lot about our goals, concrete next steps, which include kind of using the website um, as a clearinghouse for resources, templates, how-to guides, tools for helping everyone work on decrim in their communities. And we're in the process of working on an interactive map to connect different groups, different initiatives, and progress in all different areas and even outside of Michigan. So um, last meeting, we also discussed the survey results, composition of group members, and goals and the reasons why they were passionate about, decriminalizing psilocybin. Um, we discussed the pending legislation in Jackson, and we also addressed like questions and comments from group members. So lots of information on those past two meetings packed in there. And we have a lot more to talk about tonight.
Okay, and Michelle, do you want to talk about the testimony? I'm sorry, the templates that everybody received?
Yeah, hi. Um, so it was short notice and apologies there, but really I just wanted to touch on like the expectation that these things will be coming to your email from us when there's actionable items that we can take. So we sent out an email to everybody. When was it? Monday?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Monday, maybe Sunday. Yeah. With an email template of with an email template advocating for decriminalization to the city council members of Jackson. And so as we continue into this work, I just wanted to touch on the expectation that we will be sending these things. And that is just a really easy, quick way, regardless of where you are in the state, that you can help advocate for any municipality, any county that may be at that kind of voting stage, or on a state level, really, it's just expect to see those kind of actionable items and know that they're important, and that they do matter. So taking the time to just, put your name on an email and forward it to a city council member, 15 of those emails can make a huge, huge difference. Yeah, just real quick, just expect those kind of actionable items in a more timely manner in the future. And we will include who you need to send it to, the addresses. So really just kind of taking that thinking component out of it, so you can just easily support.
Okay. On to the great item of tonight's meeting. And Michelle and Elena are going to talk about Jackson. And a lot of you were there, so you might also want to chime in, but we also have some guests to talk about, like I said, their grassroots efforts and how that led to success last night. So ladies, take it away.
Well, as Cecilia mentioned, we were there at the Jackson City Council meeting last night, where the Jackson City Council was considering essentially decriminalization for the city of Jackson. And so this is kind of what the outcome that we're hoping in a lot of other communities, but Jackson community members have been working on this for several years now. Oh, I see Kate has joined us. And there's just basically a lot of really good information and tips and strategies of how they were able to make this happen in their community. So the final results of the vote last night was 4 out of 7 city council members voted yes for decrim in Jackson. So that was a big success. And the few holdouts were still pretty open and actually spoke pretty praisingly about the work that was done to provide them with education about why this is important. So
I first of all, congratulations for all the hard work that was put into that. I know it was a 3-year campaign, and I can't wait for you guys to share what that process was like. Personally, we've spoken a little bit about it, and it is a lot of work and it's exhausting. So kudos to all of you that put in that time. Like it's huge. I was really blown away by how many people showed up last night. I'm not sure if your city council meetings are usually that full, but that was a pretty full city council meeting. Lots of colorful characters there. And it was great to see so many people supporting the resolution. It was really interesting to me. I hadn't yet come across a vote where there was so much misinformation opposition. And as we were sitting there and listening to people just say things that weren't true as a reason to not pass the resolution, you know, there was a lot of laughter, and we were kind of, Elena and I were kind of talking to each other as all of this was happening. And I was really thankful that Ann got up and kind of corrected some of that. So that was a new experience for me, because I in Ferndale and Ypsilanti, that wasn't really something that came across. It was also really noticeable to me what a bigger city Jackson is than Ferndale, which is where I am. We have 19,000 people in Ferndale. Jackson has about 32,000. So that's pretty huge. So it's just, it was great to see. I really appreciated all the testimony. But what really, really stuck with me was the councilman who shared his testimony about him and his wife and postpartum, and openly admitted that, you know, they utilize these medicines while still illegal. You know, that's a huge risk for him. And it was really powerful. Like I cried when he told his story. I cried when I told my story too. And that's okay. But also seeing the mayor be so outwardly happy about it. You know, he was basically screaming "free the mushroom," which is just not at all what I expected either. So I think it's a testament to the huge amount of advocacy that was put into this, the education, the time, the persistence, It's incredible, and it's a well-deserved win, and it just so impactful for your community and our larger community of Michigan. And it was an honor to be there. So thank you again for doing that work and for caring so much about your community.
Would either of you like to introduce Kate? And perhaps Elena will be here soon, but
Yeah, I'll introduce Kate.
thanks.
So I've known Kate for a few years actually. And we've met, we originally met at, I think it was the Detroit Psychedelic Conference 4 years ago. And we just kind of, hit it off immediately, talking about mushrooms, talking about the community, harm reduction, all sorts of things, kids, what have you. And through the years, it's been really exciting to know that you guys were putting this work into it, and then to see the outcome, and also to get to know you and Alina better. So Kate is fantastic. She just did all this work. She works at the Seed Cellar, which is another fantastic institution in Jackson. And I think she has a lot to say. So we're really glad you're here, Kate.
Oh, thank you. I thought it might be easier to get out of my house. So I'm on my dog walk right now. So if you hear like car noises around, that's why. But yeah, I appreciate the introduction. When you started talking, I was like, oh my gosh, it has been like 4 or 5 years that I've known you, which is crazy. And it's one of the things too that's kind of weird about it being done now is like, oh, we did it. Like it has been such a unknown type of thing for the last 3 years that we've been talking consistently at the meetings, and 4 years that we've been kind of having it in the works. But I think like a big part of what we did and what made us successful was just like that persistence. Like when we first started out, I kind of said like our game plan has to be to just annoy them into agreeing on a level, like letting them know that we will consistently show up, we will consistently talk, we will counter any arguments that come up, we will provide information, we will talk to everybody. After it got put on the agenda, we got like a lot of different Facebook posts, that were, you noticed the amount of misinformation there, and there were just certain people in the community that were willing to speak loudly and incorrectly, and you have to be able to make, some sort of coherent rebuttal to those, in my opinion, because they are valid concerns, even if they are not based at all in reality. That's what that person's worried about. That's why they don't want it to happen. So trying to actively engage with the community members that don't really want to engage with you. But I do think, we knew really early on that Will was in support, but he never publicly came out until at that meeting. As far as I know, he obviously talked, I think, to other council members beforehand. I don't think that was like, and I could be wrong, this is my assumption, I don't know that was the first time the mayor heard that story to be that compelling to him, but like I do think it is helpful when you go out there and you say every time, these are these are all the people doing it. It makes it easier for the city council members to then come forward and say they use it, they support it, because they're more in line with their community in that way. We also got like a weird amount of pushback from having people from other communities come. Like a lot of people thought, oh, it's this group from Ann Arbor coming out, because we had like, after Ann Bannister spoke the first time, they were like, it's all people from Ann Arbor, and Roger lives in Ann Arbor. And we're like, no, we don't. Like we're residents of here. We want the change for us here. And, a big part of like what I think is helpful is having like, when I would be like your aces in their places type of thing, like certain people are not comfortable talking. That's fine. They don't need to. We had those buttons made up that we made ourselves that just said like decrim Jackson, decrim Michigan, decrim ayahuasca, entheogens, etc. And people that didn't want to speak could just sit in the audience with those buttons on. And it was a very good way to demonstrate that there was a lot of support. And you could mention that there are people here that don't feel comfortable talking for one reason or another. And then on top of like the consistent talking, we were emailing. Alina emailed the city council members every couple of weeks to say, hey, can we set up a meeting? Do you want to sit down and talk? Do you have any questions? Do you want to, go have lunch, see where we're at, see what we need to do? And I think a lot of that just being persistent, being around, being a little annoying, a little bit of the squeaky wheel, eventually paid off. But another big factor that had to happen for the Jackman movement to go through is that we had to wait for an election. We had a ward member that we knew was not going to be in favor, and they weren't fully confident putting it forward before she was replaced with somebody that was in favor. So it's like getting involved on the election part of it too. Can you get people in the seats that are more favorable to you if some of the members are hard nosed? Oh, I don't know what else you really want me to get into specific wise.
Would you mind talking about what we were talking about the other night, the specific council person you had opposition from, and the time that you guys took with them, and like what kind of materials and advocacy you used to address their concerns, and like what was the outcome with that specific council member yesterday?
Arlene?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the one of the no votes yesterday, we knew Freddie was a no. He was, you can tell me whatever you want, I'm not going to change my mind. Very blunt about it. But Arlene, we had sat with her, and she had very specific concerns, like how she talked, like she's got a situation she's dealing with. She had a loved one that had some sort of overdose death. And she just did not feel confident that these things were not involved. So we have this, like, I think it's like a 3-inch binder that is just like chock full of Johns Hopkins researches, like letters from the Wayne County sheriff and prosecutors and blah, blah, blah. And they're all tabbed. So, if you're going to talk about DV, you can quickly find the DV pages. So we're able to show her, like, these are the, studies related to addiction and dependency, and trying to explain to her that, like, these aren't really the kinds of drugs that people are like lacing with things, like they're much more healing medicines, and allowing people to have free and safe access to them is more likely to result in clean, good medicine versus like on the street. And I mean, we really thought that she had been convinced. We gave her lots of different articles and information, and like, it was a very weird, her comments again were very weird to me, because on the one hand she said she's happy that it's passed because that's what people want, but she personally had this like hang up she couldn't get over that was the barrier for her, but she understood how it was a good thing, I think. So it's one of those things where that was a hard one for me, because we had spent a lot of time talking to her, and I don't begrudge her ultimate position on it, because I do think it's scary. And I think that's kind of one of my things where, like, even if it's not actually a valid concern, it like matters to them. So being able to like meet them where they're at and explain what the reality is versus what they've thought they knew about it. But it's very hard to re-educate people. Like, once you know something is true or believe it to be true, it's very hard to get them to say, maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, we didn't get Arlene. I thought we might have, but I think, maybe if it had been up to her, maybe if she had been the deciding vote, then it would have been persuasive enough, you know, but, and maybe there's something more we could have given her to alleviate those concerns, but, you know, at least I had a clear understanding when I saw her no vote why it was up there, you know. And there's a chance we would convert her, unlike Miss Nancy, who is just anti-drug, and it was a drug, and you weren't going to convince him it wasn't a drug. And he had a personal religious conviction against any sort of substance that might affect you in any way, you know? So like for him, it was like a deep moral conviction that was not going to change. And if we had had 3 of those folks, it probably would have been a, well, we're waiting for another election year type of thing, you know?
Yeah. Can you talk about how you guys started the process?
Yeah, well, I mean, we worked with lots of the different, you know, entities that existed at the time, as far as like, you know, we had lots of meetings with who's doing what's your game plan, strategy, you know, what resources do we have and need? And that was, you know, it was very helpful to be able to say, here's the letter from the prosecutors and stuff, like getting all of that stuff up front is very helpful. Here's all the existing, you know, good literature for it. And I know there's like a variety of places that all of that stuff is compiled to access. You know, but it's, if you have a response to every criticism, it becomes a lot easier, faster, you know, so getting kind of that stuff as organized as possible beginning. We also started having like monthly like community meetings where if you're curious about it or you want to get involved, you can come down. It was easy for us because we have the seed cellar right there, you know. And we partnered with Michigan Psychedelic Society, which was extremely helpful. I think, and that's, Alina did a lot of the like resource gathering, so she would probably be a better one for that. But you know, we had like kind of their game plan, and then we kind of decided like what would work well for the people that we had routinely involved in the structure of it. And you know, we kind of decided, all right, we're gonna start hammering the meetings, and really trying to build that like community involvement and awareness. You know, like I think one of the times I spoke in a meeting, I was like, there are a lot quieter ways we could have done this, like through a prosecutor's letter and stuff, you know, for our advocacy, but we wanted it to be a community movement where people know what's going on and they can get involved, they can have a say. So, you know, that was kind of like one of our first, I think, big decisions to say like we were going to have it be a upfront process. And then kind of deciding to like, we went through and had some, if you don't really want to talk or tell your own story, here's some things that you can come out and say. We would have days where if you don't really know what to say, you can come in and sit down. We had like a little, like a help you write out your speech form template thing, you know, to like workshop speeches if that's not what you're comfortable with. We had a big email chain that we would send out newsletters to, but a lot of it was just being consistent with those things for the full 3 years and not getting discouraged when they don't really respond to you in what seems like a timely manner, you know. We had little hints along the way that some of them, like the mayor has said pretty openly at several meetings, he's in support of it. And at the beginning, he kind of tried to suggest some things like, what if you put like a usage limit in there? That might help it get passed. And it was like, well, we put a usage limit that kind of suggests like a safe dose, which we're not trying to do. Oh, I do think one of the other things that was super important to us is saying like, this is what our messaging will be.
Yeah.
Lost her. Just briefly here.
Maybe Alina, if you want to jump in and talk about some of those resources, because to follow up with those strategies, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure which resources Kate already covered, but the Decriminalize Nature website, in their pamphlet, their guide, they have a few different email templates and some different studies. So for each of the different main entheogens, they have like a couple different studies, news articles, and that's like right in like the handbook that they have. So we use some of those. Some of them are outdated, but we use some of those, and then really it's just like Google search, scholarly articles, PubMed, scholarly reports, just looking at what is out there, reading it, and organizing it. We started printing them out, and then got a like 2-ring binder, and then went through and started just organizing them into different categories. Like we had one that was just, depression, anxiety, crime, and there's a digital copy of this too, so I can share that with you guys if you want. I went ahead, and as we were printing them, I was like, okay, well, because they really like paper copies. Our council members really like paper copies. Like we would email them all these as well. They really, really enjoyed seeing paper copies. And once we started compiling that notebook, I wish I had it with me, but you can imagine, a 2-ring notebook or a 2-inch notebook is thick, and it's full of just papers and all this different information about not that many articles, more research studies, a few articles, because some of the studies are hard to understand. So then the article that somebody writes explains what the study is, and that makes it easier for them to read, because we're all just, you gotta imagine that people are on like an even level. Like not everybody understands these terms. Like a lot of them don't even know what entheogen means. Like, so yeah. But those are great starts. And if anybody wants any of those articles, like I said, I have a digital copy too, so I could send it to you guys.
Did you write the resolution? Did you write it did you write it with city council? Like how did the resolution get formed?
So we literally took the Washtenaw County Ann Arbor resolution and sent it to our sponsor, Will, and he took out, our resolution is almost the same. It's just missing a few different words, like a few different paragraphs, and they have a lot of different resources listed in the resolution, and ours does not, but it's literally very similar to that. He did it himself. We didn't like sit down with him and like, okay, this, like, no, he took that upon himself and did that, wrote it up.
And
based
so
on what we gave him.
And so you guys got a city council person to sponsor the resolution, right? So you focused on one city council person. Is that kind of how you did that, or?
He was pretty open about. He didn't tell his full story when he was first, like what he told at the meeting, but he was very open about in support of microdosing to save his marriage. So, I mean, it was just a matter of time until you start realizing, okay, well, and then for me personally, it was like, I didn't even realize that I have a lot of mutual friends between him and his wife, and learning their story and talking about their story and be like, oh yeah, the one council member that he said his wife, it saved him and his wife's life. And then people will be like, oh, I know that person, this. And it just was like pretty natural happened as far as that.
Yeah.
And we were grateful that we have somebody on council that is, was willing to be open. But I would say, like, get to know them, ask them, they're human just like we are, you know. How do you feel? Do you know anybody? You know, people are talking about it. Somebody knows somebody that's talking about this. That's just, there is. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Did you guys find that throughout the 3-year process, within the movement you were building, did you gain people? Did you lose people? Like, how did you keep that momentum? Because that is a very realistic assumption that it can take years to get it across the finish line. What was that experience like for you guys?
I was not involved from the very beginning. When I came along, Roger and Kate were already going to the city council meetings, and I kind of was like very afraid to be in any kind of public mushroom anything. I was like, yeah, no. I've been a cannabis caregiver for many years, and I still have one patient, and that was like a nightmare. And I was just at like, oh gosh. So the first while they were going, and then once I saw them start to get a little discouraged, I was like, no, this can't happen. And then I started helping as well. So it's just really like, you just have to find your people. That really, it sounds kind of silly and lame, but it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that Kate said earlier about how in this process there was an election and you knew that one of the persons was in favor and the other one wasn't, and then that propelled you guys to get into the election cycle. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I realized that there was an election, I was like, okay, well, let's, we need to talk to the other people. Like, what are these other candidates? What do they feel? Like, this seems kind of random and in left field, but if for some reason they win, why not talk to them now and know where they stand? And I'm so glad that we did that, because that's exactly what happened. Literally, and it's given me goosebumps, because it's like, she could have lost. It could have been for nothing, but she won. So, it's, yeah. And really just all the people that are involved, you don't necessarily think that like, oh, well, this person is, and this person, like, talk to the clerk. Why not? Talk to the police chief. Why not? They all matter. Their opinions all matter. They may not all vote, but their opinions all matter.
City manager.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I would say like election year is great, because then you have more options. Like, it's like you got more options. And
had anybody in the group advocated in front of city council before? Had you had any experience or relationship with city council, or was this the first time?
No. So that's another key part, where Roger, I wish he could have got on with us on the call. Roger is definitely well known and by the city council members, and I mean even just people in the audience, other people in the office there. It was not his first time at all at doing it with the cannabis, because before we were the seed seller, we were JC3. We had cannabis. It was a compassion club underneath the caregiver rules. So it was not his first rodeo at all. And that's part of the reason why I was like, yeah, no, I don't know if I could go for another round of this, with the scrutiny of like, I do use this medicine and I do live in an area that is not legal. So me just going out here, like, I don't want to have a target on my back. I don't know what crazy member of the audience is gonna, who knows what people. So yeah, he had lots of experience. Definitely.
That's helpful.
and so that's good. I would say, I don't know if Kate talked on this, but when we haven't had that much time, her and I, just to like have like, or even just her and I and Roger to sit down and really like, okay, like, whew, this is happened. We've got past this. But when we did have a few little moments, we were talking about like, she's a great speaker. She delivers well. She's well spoken. She's well knowledged. So when she delivers the speeches that have all these scientific terms, it sounds wonderful and it's very well received. And that's a key part. So you have to have somebody that can fit that role in some capacity. It doesn't have to be an expert, just somebody that could put that shoe on and wear that, And then I really was diligent in following through and making sure, and like, we're going here and emailing this person and calling back and setting the meetings and just trying to keep everything organized and, cross all the T's and dot all the I's type of thing. So that was kind of my wheelhouse. And then Roger, with his expertise in speaking and public comment and doing different things with the natural medicine movement, like those three components are just with a short reflection, like that's the sauce right there.
I don't think I have any more questions. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just noticed. We've got some comments in the chat, and I also know that perhaps Ann and Tyler would like to jump in and talk a little bit about this. But before we move on to that, I just have a question. Is there anything that you and Kate, reflecting back on your campaign and strategy, would have done differently?
Off the top of my head, I can't say there was anything I would have done differently. Maybe there is, if I could think a little bit longer, but not really. No, I think it was all meant to, all the different steps, even meeting with, like, when she was talking about Freddie, the one that was like a no, like, still mattered in some way. So, but she, I would let her answer too. I think she's back.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry. I think I muted myself on accident and then it like kicked me out temporarily. I don't think we've gotten that far in like our, what my one boss used to call Monday morning quarterbacking of it, like what we could have done differently or better. It is funny though, because like, Alina, I hadn't remembered that you weren't there from the beginning, and that's like, we did get discouraged probably a year in, because it was like, oh my God, they don't even respond. Like they won't even look at us when we talk. And even like, we knew that Will was on board and we knew that he was our sponsor, but he wasn't like giving us thumbs up every.
Oops, you muted yourself again.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I was just saying that like, it was very hard to tell sometimes that Will was our advocate because he was pretty silent about it. So like not getting discouraged from that. Like if they're on board, just know that and hold on to it, like they'll show up when they need to. But yeah, like just, I think that if we would have known in the beginning that it was definitely going to happen, it would have maybe been easier to not get discouraged along the way. But I think that's like a very human thing. And, how Alina said, like we had our little dream team or whatever, like it was helpful to just have people say, okay, I can tell that you're not into it this week and I will be, to help get you through. And I think like that's probably the biggest thing, is like knowing that like it'll happen eventually. It's just gotta, in some small way, the stars must align to make it so. And yeah, I think definitely not diminishing the role that Roger is, what I would call like his good old boy club status, kind of helped with. He was definitely used to the politicking. He knew lots of the people. He got taken seriously in a different way, and that all lends credibility. And then, yeah, like Alina said, laying out scientific facts, or some of our more, what I would say, like, were the more gimmicky speeches. Like one time I went around to a bunch of the different gas stations and smoke shops and bought a bunch of kava and kratom and mushroom gummies, and just went into the city council and said, these are the things that are already available, with the, you know, maybe perception that they are safe because they're being sold at gas stations, but they're not. So like, it's already here, it's coming. You know, maybe having an outline of what you're going to talk about each time. But I mean, I think a lot of it's kind of unknown what's really going to work, because it's a pretty personal thing for each of the people.
I think we just lost you. You dropped out. We're pressing up against time, but I would really love to hear briefly. I know, Hugo, you wanted to say something about particularly the city councilman and the value of his testimony. And then maybe quickly also from Ann and Tyler before we move on, because we've got some great news from Chris, and then we want to talk about testimonials, but go for it, Hugo.
And yeah, I just want to highlight that besides his personal story with his wife, he also helped us by rebuking the story about the pilot. There was like a late coming guy that talked about and used the pilot that consumed mushrooms, and basically I think was trying to sense the intent of, hey, if you excuse the mushrooms, you're going to excuse this behavior, and that person will not be in jail, kind of thing. So the council member actually answer that. Like, say, if that has happened in Jackson after this has passed, the pilot will have still be charged with the 84 whatever counts for attempted murder, independently of the mushroom. The only difference will be he will not be charged because of the mushrooms. I thought that was an awesome way to review that story. Thank you everybody else for helping this.
Great. Ann and Tyler, would you like to add a little before we turn to Chris?
Go for it, Tyler.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I definitely like what you have to say there, Hugo. That's a good point. And another thing is educated research. That pilot actually had taken psilocybin mushrooms 2 days prior to his crash. It's another little fact to add in there is just, educate yourselves on even what other people say. They might not always have the right words, even though they have the right spot in their own hearts and their own desires. Everyone had a lot of awesome things to say. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you so much, Elena and Roger at the Seed Cellar. I just want to, appreciate everybody right now and appreciate that we got it passed. It was an amazing feeling. I joined in the last year and a half year. And they've done a really good job out here. And I just want to appreciate you guys that have been doing what you guys are now with Decriminalize Psilocybin Michigan.
Right. Ann.
Yes, I didn't have all that much to add either. It was really powerful when that city council member said that it was a miracle that the mushrooms had really saved his wife and their marriage and their whole family. And I'm trying to send you guys the YouTube video of all the comments, but it won't paste for me into the chat. But I was surprised at all the naysayers, but Kate and Elena gave a good description of why those two particular council members were hesitant, and so luckily there were only two of them, and yeah, it was really great, and congratulations to all you guys for working on that.
Chris, why don't you give us some good news?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. Thank you y'all so much. That was awesome to hear. We'll definitely circle back to some of y'all with some more questions too during the open discussion part, and for some continued meetings also kind of after the holidays. It would be awesome to have y'all back.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Since y'all are, really doing this and have some momentum behind you, but then also just, as guests, it was awesome to get this insight. So yeah, on the other day, I think it was Monday, I met with Representative Mike McFall, just really briefly, just to kind of get an introduction and let him know what we're doing here. And he was very excited to hear that, he was very excited to hear about Jackson. He hadn't heard about that. he was appreciative that y'all were doing that kind of parallel. Like the awesome thing is that people are all doing this around the state kind of already, or people kind of have this mindset that we're working towards, and we're not even aware of everyone that's doing it at the moment. So, he gave us some good insight, and we'll kind of flesh this out also at more meetings. But he basically was he'll speak at some of these meetings, at some of our meetings upcoming after the holidays as well. And he'll definitely lend his voice to this movement directly. His bill is based on PTSD diagnosis and psilocybin access at the state level, and he pushed forward for veterans to kind of really get it centric in the news, but it's for everyone with that diagnosis. He brought up some interesting points as far as just the types of people that are supportive, the type of people that give pushback, some of the questions that are being asked. I'm not sure if this got asked in Jackson, but they were wondering, if we open this up for people, then how will they safely get access? And so at the state level, that's an interesting question, and it's hard to give a point blank answer. It's hard to just come up with one off the top of our head. So we'll have to do some thinking, and it might look again different for different people. Like, unfortunately, when there's testing involved, it involves regulation, and that kind of has some pitfalls with people saying this is how things should be done. These are the types of people that can offer this. And so when you start doing lab testing, that's not even necessarily a possibility when it's still illegal at the federal level. So to introduce that like like suddenly marijuana legalization or medicalization, that become like the ball gets rolling really, really quickly. And it's hard to like, again, make all that change all at once compared to something like decriminalization or so. So at the state level, when there's politicians that then have to go back and take this to their people or their committees, it is a more difficult task to say, hey, just the people themselves should be able to supply this as they have been, and kind of keep this unregulated. So that's something we can keep thinking about. He also mentioned that there's a couple people, there's a couple of politicians and reps and senators that are willing to sponsor these types of like this movement or these resolutions now. We talked to one gentleman who writes software for voters, and it kind of gives people a score. There's a national database for Democrats, and there's for other parties and stuff. So but this is specifically for left-leaning folks. Actually, no, I take that back. It just gives people a score 0 to 100 on which way they might have voted. And so it can kind of give us insight on the type of people that are interested in entheogens, or just mushrooms rather. And that's like on the left or right. So using that to reach out to people, but also to connect us with groups that are like-minded and politicians that are like-minded. And he can connect us to a whole lot of people. So there's a number of people that used to be, you would want to follow your party line to have the best shot. Now there's certain places that you'll get blown out if you run with a typical mindset. Or you're in a rural place that always leans right and you're running as a Democrat. So more and more people are finding benefit in stepping outside the boundaries a little bit and being willing to sponsor something like decriminalization and mushrooms to get themselves in the, it might be selfish at some of this, but also just that they actually do believe in these ideas and are willing to finally stand out and say like, hey, there's benefits in bringing these to people. So Kathy Schmaltz is one representative. And I found it interesting that Mayor Mahoney ran against her in a race, and whether that also potentially had to do with whatever timing of the vote. Now she is willing to now also support psilocybin in upcoming too. So it was kind of an interesting head to head with both of them. And so Mike McFall let me know that she is an ally as far as that goes. And we're going to build him a deck or kind of a really polished set of materials with the types of video testimonials that we use, with studies and letters and just high production value that then he can send to other people, politicians or community members that are interested in this stuff. I have a couple more questions also for Kate and Alina and Tyler, and we can kind of get into that in a little bit in the open discussion part. That was it. We can talk about more of the strategy and what Mike McFall can is gonna help us with. But that was kind of the initial just excitement of him and him kind of wanting to spread his wings. He did mention that right now the bill that he's working on is kind of stalled. It's kind of getting some pushback. Just like there's law enforcement that will be like, we'll talk about this with you, but we still just can't support it right now. And so I think just like this education that we're all doing and getting all into all these other cities and towns and starting to knock them down like dominoes. And that's kind of what they asked of us before at the state level, is to come back with polling, come back with community numbers, and come back with people that are interested in this. So that's kind of where we're going to keep starting at here.
And on the point of that digital deck, what keeps coming through with this meeting is the value of personal testimonies. We keep talking about that, Councilman. And Ann's link to the YouTube from last night did just come through if you want to hear people's personal testimonies. But Elena and Michelle are going to talk a little bit about some of the structures and things you need to keep in mind for them to be most effective. So go ahead.
So as far as personal recorded testimonies, keeping it short, keeping it personal. 3 minutes is the amount of time that you have to speak in front of a city council typically, but we actually recommend under that, maybe 1 to 2 minutes. Having it in a format that is going to be easy to watch. I know Chris last meeting talked a little bit about having overlays and information on top of it, which we're going to be making available. So really having your personal testimony tailored to your lived experience, the things that you're passionate about, make it so much more effective.
Yeah, I'll just add to that it can be a lot to tell strangers about potentially your worst life experiences, pain, trauma, addiction, affliction, whatever reason you were brought to the mushroom or feel called to do or support this work. It can be messy to share our vulnerabilities, and that's totally okay. I was crying at the dais last night. It gets across the message of how important it is to be able to heal ourselves and our communities, and keep people out of jail and keep people from dying. And you may have testimony that's rooted in spiritual awareness or consciousness expansion, connection to nature, etc. It's all vitally important. I think diversity of lived experience in this space of advocacy paints a much broader, more inclusive picture. Yeah, I think it's important to, kind of frame all of that, because it's not easy to talk about these things. And it could be anything from living in a municipality where it is still criminalized and fearing, punitive punishment for that. Like that is a real fear. Also, like I said, the fear of being vulnerable. But it's all just so vitally important. So don't be afraid to cry or scream or share something beautiful. It's all necessary and it's all helpful. And I would also suggest writing things down. I know for some people it can be easy to just kind of speak off the cuff. But for a lot of us, it is much easier to kind of write that down in the moment, whether you're, doing a video testimonial or standing in front of a dais. It can be really easy for all of those thoughts to just kind of get jumbled. So writing those things down to help keep you centered is a really good tool. And last night I didn't write anything down versus prior speaking in front of city councils before. And it was a notable shift for me. So I definitely advocate for that, that stability and that focus, and the feeling of not leaving something unsaid. And then I would say your testimonial is something that you can echo when you're talking to people. So you don't have to rethink those things. So you can just keep talking about it with ease. That's really helpful too. And it's okay to tell your story as many times as needed. You may hear yourself say it 100,000 times, but it might be somebody else's first time hearing it. And so I think about all of these things when I do a testimonial, just because I tend to get in my brain, and a lot of people tend to get in their brains. So if I put these kind of parameters in place, it helps me. And something that Kate was kind of touching on earlier, don't worry about having the right words. Your words are the right words because it's your experience. And so if you easily can cite studies and feel comfortable using medical terminology, that's fantastic. But if you don't, that's fine too. And the same with drug terminology, policy terminology. If that's something that's in your wheelhouse and you feel should be a part of your testimony, that's fantastic. But if it's not, that's great too. Really, the point is to convey you and your lived experience, not to feel pressure about saying the right thing or using the right term. You're conveying you. And we keep saying lived experience. And I think that's really important because so often in policy decisions, lived experience is set to the side and it should be at the base of all policy. But on the other side of that coin, lived experience is what gets policymakers involved. So as both things are true, just know your lived experience is really important currency. And not just here, but in everything. So just don't, I think early on when I started joining these communities and knowing that I wasn't on a lonely island healing myself, there was a lot of intimidation on my part to say the right thing. And I didn't have that language yet. And I don't want anybody to feel like their story's not as important because they don't have the right language. Your language is the right language. And I think that's about all I have on that today.
Any more?
Thank you, Michelle.
Elena?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to move into the open discussion, but I'd love to start with what Ann just posted in the chat, which I think all of you can see, which is a brilliant strategy about following the social media of politicians, for example, and encouraging them. I mean, that's, if you can, Ann, can you talk a little bit about that? That's just like, I don't have Facebook. I'm like way old school, but that strikes me as just genius.
Yes, I'm sure he has a lot of, Mike McFall is probably proud of his followers. He's got a few thousand in his role as state rep and then over 1,000 in his campaign account on Facebook. So yes, just to encourage him and make him so, because he sounds like one of the good ones and we'd like to have him, he'd be term limited as a state rep. But like Yusuf Rob, maybe he could come back and be a Hazel Park County Commissioner or still do good things or run for Senate. So that's what I meant is I just like to like their posts and follow their page on the good ones.
Excellent. Chris, I know you had questions you wanted to follow up with, so.
Yeah, a couple of questions. That was awesome again to hear y'all talk. Thank you so much. Also Kate, I think I've also met you a few years ago too. We were up in like Traverse City. I think y'all were doing a cannabis convention for Seed Seller, and I was working with Decriminalize Michigan, collecting signatures, and we were tabling next to each other. And you were like, "Oh, I'd like to do something like that in Jackson," and I was like, back in probably 2021. So it's a long time coming, and amazing job. Seriously, that's like I'm glad you haven't done any Monday morning quarterbacking. Just enjoy it for now. Was there any did they ask you to change anything on the resolution that you found was unreasonable, or did they come back with any demands, or what did they take out of the Ann Arbor resolution? Was that like notable? And that's still like either Alina or Katie.
Hi, sorry, I can't. I'm having a real hard time because like I'm on my phone telling when my camera's on and when my microphone's on, so I apologize. That's funny though. I do remember meeting you now at that Traverse City thing. There was like a masquerade ball or something with it too, right?
Yeah,
like that weird after party thing. But anyway, we gave them, I think we ended up sending them a few different copies of resolutions, and they would occasionally come back. And one of the things that I think the points you had made earlier about decrimming versus some sort of like legalization, like you have to understand that the people making the rules don't understand any of this stuff. You know what I mean? So sometimes they'll come back with like a rule suggestion, or like the one that sticks out to me was the mayor was like, maybe it would be helpful to have that like a cap on it, like how much someone could have. And I like my counter to that was like, that really to me implies a safe usage limit or like a recommended dose, because people read things funny, right? Like there's the intent with which you write it, and then there's the way that people will read it. So that was, I think, the only recommendation that got made to us that I can really remember is like putting some sort of limit in there and then explaining why we wouldn't want to do that. He was like, oh, that makes sense. But it is like the ability to have those back and forth discussions between like, maybe this would help, but maybe it wouldn't be helpful. With being able to have that open dialogue. But I know too, like a lot of the changes that they made or the specific words that they swapped around were like the city attorney. I know the city attorney mulled that over, for probably the duration of the time we were sending it to them. So, I do think it was helpful to have, here's the 4 or 5 different wordings that already exist. And those are all fine. So you can pick one of those. But I don't think in substance, it's very different than any of the other ones.
Okay, that's cool.
And
also,
just
yeah.
Oh, sorry. A thought that I had in talking about writing out your speeches, the word entheogens is so hard for people. And Roger is actually dyslexic. So a lot of times we would practice speeches with each other. And when I noticed that he got hung up on certain words, we would go back through and like, anytime he pronounced entheogens correctly, it's because written out on the speech was like the letter N dash theo dash gen. So like you can phonetically spell things for yourself to make it easier to pronounce them when you're nervous talking in front of people. And for Roger, that was like a huge help. For me, I would have been like, read it all weird, but you can adapt different styles to make it easier to speak because it is a nerve-wracking thing. That was the other little nugget that popped into my brain when you were talking about the speech writing particularly, or when Michelle was.
Yeah, totally. And even when they were speaking about it last night and reading what they were about to vote on, and they were even mispronouncing it too. So in some of it's a new word for them too. So
yeah.
Well,
and they've heard it incorrectly as often as they've heard it said correctly, which is fine, but it's a tricky word to say, and it's a hard concept,
Just to add to that real quick, when Elena and I got out of the staircase, there was a Fox reporter. He actually walked up with us. Yeah, he walked up with us. And he was like, "Why are you here?" And so we started talking, and he was like, "Can we film you?" And we said, "Sure." He couldn't pronounce psilocybin. So he was there doing a story on the work you guys were doing and couldn't pronounce the words for the story. So just to kind of compound on what you're saying.
And to just go a little further, he was at the Seed Seller before coming to the city council meeting for like over an hour. And we kept on like, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, he's not getting it right now. I don't.
Yeah.
Do you
I
think
mean,
that
Paul
there's
Stamets pronounces
not
it philosophy, so
yeah. Do you think that there's benefit of using more simplistic terminology like plant medicine? I know that that's not correct because mushrooms aren't plants, but a lot of times people can understand simpler concepts. What did you find that seems to hit with most people?
I think I generally would say both of them interchangeably in my talks, like where I'm here to talk about decriminalizing entheogens, these like substances, these traditional medicines, these things are natural, they come from plants. So like I do think it's helpful to use correct terminology, but I'm a little bit of a stickler about stuff like that. Like how you said, even though mushrooms aren't plants, I'd be the person like, technically, so like I'm a little annoying about it. But I do think it's whatever language is comfortable for you to use about them. You know what I mean? I know people that are offended by calling them shrooms, boomers, like, but that's to me, it's not necessarily a disrespectful term for the things, it's just the language that you use. And the more you normalize it and talk about it, the better.
Okay, totally. I thought it was interesting that the news reporter, they like you said, there's kind of a lot of misinformation from the people that are speaking up, but even in their own news report, when they're interviewing people that are kind of giving falsehoods, they don't do any correction in their news report. So I watched what that Fox reporter put out, and it was like that's just to be expected. And I mean, journalism is getting a little bit less detailed as the years go on. But so that is important to kind of like always go over the basics here. It's like to reiterate legalization versus decriminalization, and the basics of just what these are as far as plants, fungi, animals for entheogens, or just psilocybin for mushrooms. It's like we might repeat a lot of the basic information, but so we all get it regularly and can just say it without practicing, basically. And the most basics, like, yeah, even the people reporting on this or the politicians voting on it, they're not necessarily well versed in it. So it's our job to give them the most education possible, and then kind of spoon feed them the stuff and give them a basic education as we go to. Let's see. How did you find your first sponsor also? And like when y'all kind of first started your group, I know you used Michigan Psychedelic Society's model and Decrim Nature's Nationals umbrella kind of model and stuff. Did you have like a group that you were like, we are Decrim Nature Jackson, we're gonna go into city council, or were there just a few of you that did it and then started your group? And then how did you first find the sponsor?
So if you would have asked me before Alina talked, I would have said I thought that we had started it as our group, but apparently we did not. And honestly, like now thinking back on it, it might have been like my conversation with you at that Traverse City thing, spurring it to be like, no, we can just go start talking. Because when we sat down, like Roger and I were kind of surprised at how long we had been going to the meetings. So I think that it was probably when Alina started helping out a lot more, that we got more consistently involved with the other aspects, but I had met people from before then. So I feel bad that I don't have like a more concrete realm of, but it has been kind of like a whirlwind of excitement and ups and downs. I do think now looking back, it probably would have been helpful to have all of that from the beginning, but we didn't have Alina then, I guess. So it fell into place when it did. But I think that we are like the Jackson chapter of the Michigan Psychedelic Society at this point is how it's technically worked out. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But it was, I think, mostly just having the core group of people that it didn't really matter to us to be a part of the affiliated organization. We just kind of had the common goal of the decrim.
Yeah. Yeah. I can agree.
Yeah. Do you have any insight, Tyler?
like I said, I came in probably in the last year and a half. Alina, Kate, and Roger had already done everything that really could be done. I just tried to topple onto it as much as they could. I am working currently on trying helping other cities and spreading out now. I'm currently trying to reach out to Nancy and see what's going on there, and see about starting something there. And then from there, I'm trying to be hands-on and help more communities grow in this way.
You mentioned
Tyler, I
Lansing?
got the Lansing guys contact. So
All right, yeah,
Lansing
definitely.
has, yeah.
Yeah, Nate.
Yeah, I definitely love that.
Yeah,
I know
Nate
it's
Ford.
Nate. Yeah, Nate
Yep.
Ford. Okay, I couldn't get his last name. I had him on
Yeah.
Discord, but I couldn't get him to respond, so he's a little busy. I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
I would say his phone's been off the last couple of days because I tried calling him to be like, hey, guess what? I couldn't get a hold of him. So,
All right,
but
that
like
makes
he had the
sense.
rally at the Capitol last fall. So he might just like again, he might be a little burnt out right now. That would just, you know,
Yep.
it can be discouraging to feel like you're going, and that's even like I don't want to undermine how much of a benefit Will was, but throughout the process, like we knew that he was probably going to sponsor it, but it wasn't like, hey, sponsor, you ready? You know what I mean? Like he was not super open with us about it. So like we knew that he was in favor and would likely do it when the time was right, type of stuff. But like it's one of those things where you don't necessarily have to have like your champion of the court to be spearheading it. Like it was a surprise to us. Actually, the city manager saw another one of our employees at like Meyer or something. Was that it, Alina? Yeah, at Meyer, and he was like, hey, guess what? Next Thursday it might be on. And we were like, wait, what? Like we had no idea that it was actually getting put on, you know? So it's one of those things where,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to have the city council's buy-in, but they were not extremely forthcoming with us about what they were going to do. So, you know, Will made great points, and it would have been maybe more helpful along the way to know he had that one in the bag and was going to pull it out, you know, but like I didn't have the 100% knowledge the entire time that Will was like absolutely going to put it forward. Actually, like one of the conversations that we started having a few months ago is maybe we should start pressuring other city council members to put it up, you know, to put it up for a vote. We've been talking about it a long time. Like maybe we should just pick a different one, you know, and say, hey, you want to get it on there? Because, you know, Will is great and was great, but he did not respond as much to our question saying, are you gonna put it on? You got any questions? You want to meet up? You know, so like I said, I don't want to diminish Will's involvement and stuff. Like he's the reason why it ultimately went through, but in the lead up to it, Will did not give us lots of breadcrumbs to keep us going.
I would like to say, it is scary, to speak, and you know, even though it is, and sometimes it can be hard to get out there. Please do, please do. It's well worth your time. And people from communities where it's already decriminalized, please come and travel to the other communities because you guys aren't taking the risks and you guys are already more comfortable with speaking out and especially about your own personal feelings, your own beliefs, where that core emotion is where it's going to be felt throughout the room. And that's really what we need.
Well, and like I'm pretty comfortable talking in front of people. I don't care that much, you know what I mean? And it was one of those things where like I do feel like it was very helpful to have like you know, Ann especially come and talk and say, hey, I'm the expert in this area where it was already decrimmed. And I think that we have a different maybe a level of authority than she did, but I do think it's helpful to have, like you said, the people from areas where it's already happened to come say, we did it and nothing bad happened. So it's one of those things where like if I can make it to meetings and I know about them, I will happily come talk. I know that Roger is willing to do that too. You know, and we can help get the other people out that will easily talk and share stories and info.
Yeah, now y'all will be able to give insight from you know, protected area as some time goes on. And it's also as much as it's important for the people that have seen it done, the people that are doing it like, you know, in the areas that are not yet protected, we commend you to like so much. That's amazing. And that's like what most people are going to be doing in their areas around the state. But it's like that's always the hardest work is to go up in public and say, I believe in this when it's not protected yet. So that's the most kind of impressive thing. And then the repetitiveness, you feel like you're constantly ringing the doorbell or whatever, but that is what also gets them to take you seriously in the end. It's like, oh, it's been a year now and these people are still here. There's more of them. And this is really what our people want. So y'all really demonstrated exactly the strategy that's worked before and that worked applied to in all these other cities. So excellent job, seriously, with like, using the least amount of resources in the most efficient way possible and direct education and getting all types of community members. That's really exactly how you do it. So
there's a quick comment in the chat speaking of, for example, Lansing and reaching out to other communities. Ann's wondering if anybody has approached Dexter's City Council.
Place that I haven't actually, we haven't ever even kind of approached at all or looked at. Those are the types of places that often can be just overnight. They're kind of just no one's ever even approached them with it. So some of the kind of small in between, and now between Ann Arbor and Jackson, it should be easier to kind of get some of these corridors cities done. But I'm not sure if anyone also has other insight too. But that can be something we do.
And that is some of the work that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks to come is really identifying where are these hotspots, where are the people who are the most passionate about this, maybe already have connections to their city council members. We did send out a secondary email getting a little bit more data from everyone about their region and how they want to be involved. So if y'all haven't responded to that, you can. But we also have just good data from the initial sign up as well. So.
Yeah. Any more questions or comments?
I actually have a couple questions for Ann. Ann, do you find, I imagine that it's incredibly important for the person who brings this in front of City Council in a lead role is from that municipality. And even the first time it's talked about, it's this came to my mind because of, I think Kate said it earlier, that there's some skepticism from other constituents that there were groups coming in from other cities just trying to spread our drugs, right? So maybe you could talk about like the importance of the person presenting it for the first time and starting those relationships, how important it is for them to be from the municipality. And then I wanted to ask you if you have friends in other city councils that areas that aren't decriminalized that might be leaning in this direction or willing to hear that conversation that we can identify and hopefully help people mobilize.
I don't have a list of friends that haven't already decriminalized. However, it does sort of open a door, to be a former Ann Arbor council member. So that does give a warm way to contact other cities that we might target. And yeah, to your point about whether that criticism that we were not, the public commenters weren't all from Jackson. Yeah, it's a good point. And in Ann Arbor, I guess when Chris Kurtz and back in 2019, 2020 approached us, I was very enthused. I was just a lifelong hash bash person, and so this was the perfect fit for me, a great opportunity, and it all worked out that way. So Yes, trying to find like like Mike McFall and others and this guy from last night, Will, trying to find that person who understands already and doesn't have to be convinced. It might be easier than trying to, and then that person then the education of the other council members can go from there, but getting one champion. I don't know if that helps answer what you were thinking, Michelle.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's some info. We'll continue to reach out to some of the connections we've had and this this program. We'll speak on that a little bit more. That'll help us kind of organize folks and keep them kind of grouped up as well. Let me see this. Let me see. Yeah,
we lost Cecilia. Her computer died. So
yes, we'll have just a couple minutes here. Timothy, that's right. The Dexter is in Washington County. So it is technically decriminalized there right now, all entheogens. And even kind of after Washington County, it was successful. Ypsilanti still had a city council meeting and still passed it on their own, even though they were under that umbrella. And it just kind of shows official support, shows we won't officially do this at all. And that we've put thought into this. And then other programs can come with that too, or other community support there, or other local groups too. So that is still important to reach out to some of these groups, some of these places. Then also Battle Creek in Calhoun County. Back when we were doing Decriminate Michigan, there was a very small group of DN Battle Creek. They were also kind of teaming up with Kalamazoo a little bit. Right now, I don't think there's that group on its own existing individually. But so yeah, that's to answer your question. A lot of the groups they have kind of what happened in Jackson almost, where they introduce this language or introduce this idea, or they have a few community meetings, and then momentum fizzles out, and people can get discouraged, especially if you don't have the backing or previous knowledge or a group like this that kind of knows which direction to go. But then also just the last couple of years have been insane with politics and national elections and such, and people focusing on other things. And that's kind of what's bringing people back to these movements now. So that's also, I think once we really give the battle cry that we are out here, and then again, Jackson's successful, people are still thinking about these ideas, and there's still groups doing this, then we'll start to get more momentum pretty quick here. And some of the people that have done this previously, that have had groups previously, will start to show back up and say, we want to do this again. So
just to add to your point about Ypsilanti, Chris, there were still prosecutions happening in Ypsilanti, which is kind of what sparked that necessity. So even though they're under the Washington umbrella, Ypsilanti specifically was still seeing punitive measures. So yeah.
Yeah, the Washington County was just a directive that was sent out, so they didn't get exactly the same time spent on it, or training is in Ann Arbor. So, and then it's like, do those cases go somewhere? Maybe. Do they lead to other charges? Probably. And what's the sources of the end? So that's why it's so important. Okay, so yeah, and then we also we'll wrap up here. We're kind of at the end of the meeting here. We have a couple of city councils to reach out to. We've got places up in Grand Rapids and Ottawa and Lansing to reach out to. And kind of just see where these local governments are at. We've got a ton of people who just aren't showing up tonight due to the holidays, and a ton of people who were at the Jackson meeting last night who show up with us. And so again, thank you guys seriously for showing up on the busiest kind of time of the year here. as far as commitments go. It means a ton. Don't feel lonely tonight. Y'all are like the backbone of this. And a lot of people are just catching the recording. So let me see. Okay, anyone else? Elena or Michelle, I think we might be okay. And thank you, y'all. Keep a lookout for some follow-ups and the recording of this meeting. And have a great holiday. We're every first and third Wednesday of the month. So we're gonna skip the Wednesday between Christmas and New Year's and have a little break. Bring this stuff to your holiday celebrations. Bring this to the people you're gonna be around. Meditate on it a little bit. Meditate on the type of testimonial you might record. And thank you, y'all. Have an amazing holiday. Thank you so much for the support. Way to go, Jackson.
Congratulations, Jackson.
Congratulations, Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a happy holiday.
Thank you for showing up for us.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. And too many more conversations, y'all. See you.
Many more.